Welcome, everyone. Hello. Welcome. Welcome to the October meeting of the Town of Ocean Ridge. So we got more people than usual. Tracy, would you call roll, please?
Certainly. Commissioner Askov,
Present.
Vice Mayor Bonfiglio,
Here.
Commissioner Cos,
Here.
Commissioner Magruder,
Here.
and Mayor Pugh.
Here. Okay, can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now, before we begin this evening, I'd like to take maybe have a moment of silence for those folks in Las Vegas. Give us like 30 seconds. Thank you. All righty. Do you have any additions, deletions, or modifications to the agenda? And if none, is there a motion to approve? Move to approve the,
I talked to Jamie about having a discussion, which I think should come up during the course of the meeting, about hurricane. I think Jamie was gonna talk a little bit about it, and I just wanted to add something to that portion of the town manager's report.
all right, so you just go over with town manager's report? Okay, so it's not anything to adding to the agenda? Okay.
I just suggested to the commissioner, if it didn't come up, we could do it under commissioner comments, but that's why he brings it up. We
Okay.
want to make sure
I
that,
think I can dovetail it with
Okay.
your hurricane report.
that's fine.
Anything else?
I move to approve the agenda.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second?
Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, public comment. Now you can speak on anything other than what's on the agenda, now or later on. Come on up.
I'm Clara, I'm losing my voice. I'm Clara Caldwell, and I live at 48 Spanish River Drive. Mayor Pugh, Vice Mayor Bonfiglio, and commissioners of the town of Ocean Ridge. First and foremost, I want to thank you for your time and effort you devote towards the benefit of the town of Ocean Ridge and its community. I also understand when emotionally packed issues that negatively impacts us are presented to you, there may be an adversarial undertone. I want to preface my presentation by voicing my appreciation to all of you and my appreciation that I can be here to be heard and hopefully resolve this long-standing water issue. Thank all of you for all of the time and effort you extend in our behalf.
Thank you.
Suffice it to say that there has been much communication between many residents of Inlet Cay and the various arms of the town of Ocean Ridge. This water issue is more than decades old, and it is a very, very, very dangerous situation. We must work together to resolve it before a tragedy happens, and I cannot emphasize that enough. I ask that promises be kept and empty words please not be spoken. While I live at 48 Spanish River Drive and suffer lack of ingress and egress into my home during these high-standing water situations, I must emphasize this problem severely affects the residents of Spanish River Drive, Bimini Cove, and Inlet Cay Drive. The water level during these instances is way beyond navigable by pedestrians and by most vehicles other than SUVs and trucks. This latest incident, we only had one vehicle that could go back and forth in our driveway, and we could not come in or out by walking or any other means. We, the residents, those of us that are present at this meeting, and many others who are unable to be here, are totally and absolutely committed to resolving this issue that has become increasingly severe as time has passed without a proper resolution. The water in front of 48 Spanish River Drive rose considerably starting on September 29th, that was Saturday afternoon, and continued through October 1st, and did not drain so as to have accessibility to the house until 11 a.m. this morning. I will emphasize that there were over 20 consecutive hours between Sunday, October 1st and this morning, whereby there was no accessibility to 48 Spanish River Drive. You cannot walk in or out. You could not have a low passing car go in there. We had a plumber come, and he literally had to back his truck up. Obviously, with low standing cars, if there's water, you can't take it out of the garage because the water comes in through the exhaust pipe. Where the high water standing on Spanish River Drive cul-de-sac, this, I have to refer to my notes, I'm sorry. This standing water on Spanish River Drive extended around the corner to Bimini Cove, rendering Herb and Louise Stolitsky's home totally inaccessible. They have two driveways, one on Spanish River Drive and one clear around the corner on Bimini Cove. Neither driveway could be traversed at all. The water was that high. The water level on the intercoastal end of Inlet K Drive, was equally high and dangerous. Most of the residents on Inlet K are affected, some of us more so than others. But all of us are very concerned and very committed to resolving this issue. I would like to start by referring you to the second page of an email chain. May I distribute these? I only have 4 copies, but. There is an email exchange dated August 25th, 2017. This is long before the hurricane, between Mr. Rick Carey and a fellow resident on Spanish River Drive and Mr. James Titcomb, the town manager. If you please read the highlighted sentence whereby Mr. Titcomb assures Mr. Carey of the resources the town has and would employ in the case of severe flooding. I've abbreviated that whole sentence because you're all reading it. I called numerous times between Friday afternoon, September 29th, and Monday morning, October 2nd, 2017, advising the town through voicemails to Mr. Titcomb's supposedly direct number, the building clerk, and the police department on recorded lines of the dangerous situation existing at our home and in our neighborhood. I did speak with Mr. Titcomb this morning, and whereby he repeated all the same sound bites he has spoken for the last 2 years without results or resolutions. During these flooding conditions, there was no, and I emphasize this, no deployment of resources. In fact, no one came to investigate the situation until Mr. Cos, having heard of our problem at Town Hall this morning, kindly came this afternoon to our home and neighborhood because he was concerned and caring enough to want to see for himself and to try and help this flooding situation that is. It amazes me that measures were not taken to alleviate or prevent this flooding that is known to consistently happen and happen with greater intensity, especially immediately before Hurricane Irma. I have a few pictures, and I believe I passed them along there. I have a few pictures. I would like to share with you. Okay, this picture,
Do you still have it there?
I gave them Oh, maybe it's here.
Yeah, there you go.
We could start with the first, and I'll be able to identify it in the sequence. What about the
No, my box not working either.
These pictures were taken on Sunday afternoon about 4:30 p.m. at mid-tide. The picture that you are seeing is the picture directly in front of our house. And this picture may be deceiving because you cannot really see the extent or the depth of the water level. However, we go to the next picture, this is the picture to the north of our house. And if you see the mailbox, there is a water drain directly beneath the mailbox. I want to point out to your attention that there is no water bubbling, no water being drained out of this water drain. It is just standing there. And if you also notice, you can see the extent of the watermark from the street onto the water, and there's a big watermark from the driveway onto the actual water level, because that's how deep the water was. If we go to the next one, this is a picture to the north of our house that is adjacent to Herb and Louise Stolitsky's. I want to point your attention to the water standing on the next side, not where the driveway is, but where the rocks are. There's standing water there. There's also a drain there. There's no water bubbling. There's nothing that is draining out from this water situation. And I want you to view the water that's going all the way around. You really can't see the depth, but it is an extreme amount of water, as you can see, into the driveway, so it's not navigable either by walking or by low cars. This gives you some idea of the Stolitsky's driveway on Bimini Cove. That is Herb standing by the bushes. And his driveway, obviously, is where you see the swale in front. There was no way we could enter or exit. This gives you a broader picture of the water that goes all the way from Spanish River Drive down to Bimini Cove, and Herb is walking away from his driveway because he has nowhere to go. And this is the water on Bimini Cove. You can see water on both sides. The grass area is right in front of the Stolitsky's property. The garage door, the beige garage door, is the Ploffchem, and they are on the corner of Spanish River and Bimini Cove, and the house next door is Mr. Mudd's. As you can see, it's not navigable. I didn't want to just take pictures of Spanish River Drive. I also wanted to bring about the fact that this problem exists not just with me, but with everybody. And it is a very, very problematic area. I'm aware some of you have been inundated over the last decade or so with countless pictures denoting the same images I'm presenting to you tonight. However, I will stress that these pictures do not fully show the extent or extreme water accumulation we have to endure. At this juncture, I would like to voice my sentiment and the sentiment of my fellow Rhett neighbors. I want to please ask you to start telling us the facts, not the fables. Don't tell us what you think we want to hear. Tell us what is actually happening, because it is very, very important to us to prepare for it. And more importantly, please let us move forward in a combined effort and in an efficient and timely manner to resolve this critical issue before something happens that makes some very, very sorrowful headlines. We've had too many of those. We don't need them here in Ocean Ridge. We are all committed to doing whatever it takes to correct the situation. We're all on the same side. We're not adversaries. We all enjoy and take pride in our town, and I want to thank you. And again, I want to thank each and every one of you for your time and your commitment to the town of Ocean Ridge.
Thank you. All right. Well, if you want some facts, I can give you some right off the bat. 2 months ago, or 2 meetings ago, 2 months ago, you all asked to have a engineering study done by another company other than our town engineer. So at that point, we asked for an RFQ, which we did, and we finally got the one company responded. So after that, now that company responds, now at this point, we have to make sure the company actually has the qualifications to be able to work in the town of Ocean Ridge. Once that's accomplished, at that point, it'll come back to the town of Ocean, to the commission here, and make a decision to approve or disapprove the contract. That's one part of the two-phase problem I believe you have over there. The second part, which is the most immediate part, is that at your house, you have 2 drain basins on either side of the driveway. Each one of those goes into a 12-inch pipe, and that 12-inch pipe actually runs along the east side of Herb Saliski's property and goes out to the intercoastal. At the end of that pipe, there's a red valve, and that red valve more than likely has a bunch of debris in it from when we had all these rains just recently, and especially on Saturday, and all that water is coming that way. And the reason why you're not seeing anything going down, because the intercoastal right now is over 2.5 feet higher than it usually is. So we talked to Jamie today, because I went by your area at 4:30 this afternoon, drove by there and went through all the water. And you have to get the company out there. They come out, they look through there, they see what it is, and they clean it out. Either that or it fell off. But I mean, at 12 inches, it's this big, the valve that's on there. So if that valve is only open this much, and the water level is a foot or 2 feet above the valve, that's where you're getting all this water this particular time. So now the second part, like I said earlier, is this part that you were talking about, the continual flooding or water is always there. Not by this much, but by it's always there. And that's the reason why you asked for the study, and that's what we've been doing. So you have, the first answer to your question is we have the RFQ. We have, like I say, the one company, and we're talking about it today at the town manager report. And the second one is the company that's coming out, is it tomorrow or Wednesday, to look at that line?
You have scheduled the valve.
To check on that valve to make sure there's something in it. Because as you know, all those other lines all the way up and down Spanish River have the same valves in there. And we constantly have to repair them. Sometimes those lines break, those pipes break. Remember we had to sleeve a couple of them? I think we sleeved yours, Mark, didn't we? Yeah, so I mean, we constantly try to fix that stuff. But sometimes when that happens, if the valve opens up, especially a 12-inch valve on a 2.5 foot higher tide, it's you having to call up and say, hey, I got all this water all over the place. I think the valve's not working. Unfortunately, that happens. And the police, they report it as well. The police department reports it to the town maintenance staff. But over the weekend, there's really no one here besides the police department. And that's why you call the police department trying to find out what's going on with it.
I would like to make a suggestion. I understand.
You have to come back up.
I used to do this often, but I don't like to take the podium very much anymore. I like to be an observer. I'd like to make a suggestion. Just as we all prepare for a storm, and we all prepare to make sure that we are all tight and ready to go, why doesn't the town do the same thing with regard to these issues? Because we've had these issues for a decade now, or more than that. And it's just a suggestion that, we have this problem. Let's make sure that the valve is working before a hurricane hits, or before we see these king tides.
Well, the answer to that question, we have a maintenance program that they come out every 6 months, and they go through the whole town. They check every valve. If we had them out here, I don't think you'd be able to call them before the hurricane's 5 days away and say, hey, quick, come look at this particular valve. How many valves are through town? I think there's like 20, is there 30?
It's something
30 or 40 valves that will all lead in intercoastal, all from 3-inch to we have a 24 or 36-inch one on the Ocean Avenue.
Do all of these valves, because when we were speaking with Manny, he had said something to the effect that he was going to install a pump, etc. And here, I also want to bring about those chain of emails, because we started having flooding problems before Hurricane Irma. And Mr. Titcomb had reassured Mr. Carey that we had whatever was ready to employ in case of flooding. And
Well, we were looking for the flooding, and in the case of like a storm surge, we have the pumps, we have diesel pumps, we have electric pumps. I believe that was the reason, what we were talking about there. Now, regarding the valves
No.
themselves, they're actually the rubber. It's not like a hand crank
I
valve.
have to correct you on that, I'm sorry, but Mr. Carey was really very concerned with the water that was accumulating on Spanish River Drive, because not only does it accumulate in front of our house, it accumulates in front of his house as well, so that we can't go by the street. And that's what he had called in for, and that's
I might
why
have
he
to-
said,
See, I didn't know about that until tonight. Actually, this afternoon when I got your email from,
I'm
so
sorry, but
we will make sure the town manager does what he needs to do.
Well, don't we have two things? Number one, we know that there's a company coming in the next 48 hours to check the valve. You know, and what with the mayor, the flap valve, which I described to you this afternoon, if a piece of debris during the storm go washed into it, and like a tree limb is wedged there, then that would allow water to come back in the wrong direction. And secondly, we do have the portable pumps, which I thought we had this discussion a couple months back about deploying the portable pumps as needed in this exact location.
Yeah, we recently used the big blue pump down on Tropical for that reason during the hurricane. There's some additional issues that are related to the Spanish River, Bimini Cove area. One of them is the tidal level. Another one is the deployment and timing of those pumps, running them on the tidal cycle. We do have two companies lined up to come out this week, one to deal with the tidal flap and one to actually scope and camera the drain line itself to make sure it's not compromised or broken. As far as Mrs. Caldwell's driveway, I may recommend we look at some alternative temporary measures, either a piece of metal or something over that would allow her to traverse the valley drain there until this gets resolved.
well, I want to emphasize something. I'm not here solely for myself. I am here for the benefit of everybody in Inlet K. So, you know, I'm not looking for a specific solution just for me. We're all suffering from this. We've had the same issues. I might also want to tell you that each of us were out there actually sweeping the swales and the streets immediately after the storm. I came back from New York, and Luda, who works with us, and I actually swept that entire circle and cul-de-sac because the Stolitzkis were not there, and obviously the Lucci's to the left of us were not there. So we're making every effort, and I'm not pointing a finger because that doesn't resolve any issues. You're devoting your time free of charge, and I so appreciate that. All we want to do is come to a specific conclusion to resolve this issue. Not to put blame on anybody. It's not anybody's fault. It just happens, but let's resolve it.
Well, the resolution of that is, in one sense, for the continuing water that is there. That's one issue. The other issue, the valve, there's not much we can do. If something gets caught in it, we do come and check it. We do have it checked all the time to make sure there's no barnacles growing on it. We have barnacle busters, clean them all out. So, I mean, that could be a problem at least more than once a year if anything gets caught. I mean, literally, you're talking about you're 2 feet above. The amount of water pressure pushing into the street is phenomenal, and that's going to take up the whole street with water, just like you see. So I mean, even at the tide going down, the tide only goes down. May not only go down halfway on that pipe, and you're still getting water. So it never seems to go away. The valve has to be
But
repaired.
to Clara's point, we have this, they come every 6 months?
Yeah, the county
So,
of
do we have them scheduled to arrive, let's say, late August? You know what I mean? When is the 6 months?
Well, it's on
According to the company that used to be right before hurricane season, prior to me getting here, it got moved back to a January timeframe. So that's why I have them coming out again. We're not waiting until it
So
comes
maybe
up
we
in
could move that
rotation.
schedule to have
Yeah.
the valves checked as close to hurricane
Or-
season as is feasible.
Or maybe we
Or
could,
do it in a rotating 3-month schedule.
thank you. That would be so appreciative because we know we have this problem. It doesn't just occur once, so this isn't an unusual situation. I think you're tired of seeing us. I'd rather see you on a social level, all of you. But, you know, there's got to be, we're all very bright people, except me. I know enough not to know too much, but, you know, if we could have them come more often to clean it out, we're all willing and committed to doing whatever is necessary and whatever you direct us to do. You know, I have offered to pay to have the pumps put in, and the Vale right next to the wall, which is on Stilitsky's side, belongs to us. And I've offered the town to use that in whichever way they want. This is on the property to the east of Stilitsky's. We have a lot on Bimini Cove. I told Manny, please feel free to use it if you need to, in whichever way you need to do it. You tell us what to do and we'll do it, but we have to rely on you, and I know you have a lot of other things on your plate, to help us out. And if coming every 3 months or 4 months would be helpful, that would be great. However, you know, to your comment, Mr. Titcomb, I humbly say that, you know, to us that are suffering through this, even though these people came after you arrived or before you arrived and they're coming in January versus, it doesn't help our situation. We need to have things done and done effectively and timely.
Okay, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Jamie, just looking to bring us back to the next meeting when they can
Sure.
change the schedule of maintenance. Especially down on Adam, because that's where we seem to have
Yeah,
most
the
of the problems.
two-pronged solution, we can step up the maintenance schedule certainly, which will address some of those short-term issues. And then, of course, the discussion about what you want to do about analyzing the system falls into that other category of the RFQ and where we go with that.
Okay. All right, some more public comment.
Richard Goldstein from 32 Harvard Drive North. Last Saturday, I had come home from a dinner, and 30 minutes later, my car was stolen out of my garage. And then yesterday, a car was stolen, no, it actually was broken into, and this is on Harvard Drive North. And a month before that, somebody else's car was broken into, and a purse was thrown into my backyard also. So we're having a condition on the street. And we have a problem because these kids that are coming through the neighborhood, they're hiding in the back of the houses. They're not hiding in the front or walking down the street. And I think that we have a condition over there. They feel comfortable by going in our neighborhood. Because when you walk down the street, sometimes you see them running off, children. I don't know where they're coming from. Mine actually came from Fort Lauderdale and came into this neighborhood and so forth. So I think that we need some kind of better way of monitoring what's going on in the neighborhood. And if it could be, somebody could help out with it, or getting some extra protection over there, we're having a problem on our street.
Chief?
I'm aware of the incidents that are happening on Harbor Drive North and South. It is not contained to Harbor Drive North and South. It is an issue that is occurring all over South Florida right now. You are correct that your car was recovered in Fort Lauderdale.
You're right.
And most of the cars that we've been missing lately from the county have been recovered in that area. We have a task force working on that problem. We do have some video which would contradict your statement that they're coming in from the back. I'm not telling you that they didn't come in from the back in your house, but we see them coming in cars, getting out of cars, taking 30 minutes to, or 30 seconds to a minute to walk up to something, check for opportunity, and drive away. Some of the evidence that was discovered on your particular incident and an incident that happened over on Adams Road clearly show that not only are the folks that are breaking into cars that are open or taking cars that have electronic key fobs that they can start. I'm not going to say that the keys are inside, could be in the garage somewhere, are coming up. It's usually a 2-minute excursion at the most. The most telling thing I will say from the perspective of your police officers is they're a little upset because on 2 occasions they saw themselves driving down the road, and then the bad guys coming about 2 or 3 minutes later, and then within 20 minutes them driving down the road again. So it's not like we're not in the area. It's just, it's very difficult to police every inch of the town 24 hours a day. We're doing the best we can. There are increased patrols. There is a heightened sense of awareness amongst the officers. I hope that that goes with the residents also. If you read the newsletters or you read some of the next door email type blast that I put out. I'm always encouraging people to be very, very vigilant of their surroundings. Don't leave your garage doors open. Take your keys in. Don't leave any valuables in your car, because these are often crimes of opportunity, and if they don't have the opportunity, they will go somewhere else.
Well, the incident with the purse that was taken out of the car, the police were actually on the corner, sitting in the front by A1A and Harbor Drive, both Harbor Drives. And actually, the robbers were on the street while they were sitting right on Harbor Drive, right at the front.
I
And
don't doubt that in the least. I've been I'd like to say the victim of that as a police officer on many occasions over the last 36 years. Not knowing that the perpetrator just drove by you can be very frustrating. It's unfortunate that
can there be a watch, some kind of watch, in addition to the police force? Some kind of,
I believe that Ocean Ridge has a built-in neighborhood watch, based upon my experience here. I try and
my
instill
watch is
that-
my dog. That's-
And your dog is probably better at it than I am, because he knows who's supposed to be in the neighborhood.
Chief,
You see me. The residents of Ocean Ridge have, in fact, a neighborhood watch without having to form it officially. I encourage everyone to call us whenever they see anything suspicious, and we will respond to everything that is reported, because you know what's normal and not normal in your neighborhood better than anybody else, with all due respect. And we would rather respond to 100 false alarms than one real one. So the Neighborhood Watch program, I think, is alive and well in Ocean Ridge. We try and instill that in everyone.
Has crime increased in the area?
Crime has
From
not
what?
increased in the first 6 months of this year over last year. Last year's increase in crime, in fact, was about 90% due to this type of thing, unlocked vehicles that were being entered and property being taken out of. You indicate that there was a burglary on Harbor Drive where a window was broken.
That was yesterday, yeah.
Yeah, there's no indication that was actually a crime. There was, the vehicle was never entered, the window was shattered, but it was never pushed in, it was intact, is my understanding. To say that it wasn't an attempted burglary, or to say it was, my experience would tell me that chances are, if it were, they got scared by somebody, and somebody would have seen them, and I wish that they would have called then. I think that we're doing everything we can with the resources we have right now to address this problem. As I say, rest assured, this is not an Ocean Ridge problem. This is a South Florida problem. There are several groups of individuals that have been identified over the past 2 years. They wake up in the morning, this is what they do. We're trying to combat on a global level with the Sheriff's Office and with the other 38 municipalities in Palm Beach County, along with Broward County Sheriff's Office and Fort Lauderdale Police Department. Your vehicle was recovered quickly because of our relationship with those people, and we can put that out. We can use your alert locations on your vehicle.
Well, actually, it was OnStar that did it.
And they're
They shut it
responding
off.
immediately.
Yeah.
If we tell them we think we have something in this area, they're responding immediately and trying to recover the vehicles and arrest the people that are responsible for it, so that we can get more information, and perhaps it appears to be an organized, even if loosely, criminal operation that's doing this throughout the state.
Okay.
Thank you,
If I
Rich.
can hitchhike on what the chief was saying, this is my cell phone. Everyone in here, when you're out walking in the neighborhood, you carry your cell phone with you, you take pictures and everything. The third number on my cell phone is the Ocean Ridge PD non-emergency line. So, and I've seen a number of things as I've been out walking, and I want to call it in, but first I've got to go in and find it in the directory, and by the time I get to the number, it's probably too late. But if you put that number in, it's right underneath my wife's phone number. So
That's a subliminal message.
Really,
Then what's number one?
you don't want to
What's your
call
first
it
number?
But non-emergency Ocean Ridge, I encourage everyone to put it on your favorites on your iPhone, and that way you'll be able to call pretty quickly.
Thank you, Don.
Hi, Stella Kolb, 204 Beachway. Hello, everybody. I just wanted to tell the group here that the Neighborhood Watch does work. We all live in small pockets, and, you know, Ocean Ridge is broken up in little pockets. Our neighborhood, since we started this and worked along with the police department, our crime level has dropped down. The neighbors let each other know what we're doing. Everybody knows who's coming back, like I just got back. They watch my house, they watch my cars. We all do that for each other. So I just wanted to let everybody know that it really does work. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Janet Mackin, also from 30 Harbor Drive North. To your point, when I first moved in, I moved in here 7 years ago, and when I first came in, I'm alone in my home, I would see the light go through the wall, you know, the ceiling and the blinds in my bedroom at night, and I'd be scared to death because I didn't know what it was. And, you know, then I would get up and I'd look through and I would see that it was the police officers, the car coming down, shining the light, which I thought was, wow, this is a wonderful thing. They were there throughout the night because I was getting to know the house, know the neighborhood, know the sounds. And I don't even see that anymore. So, and I am home 99% of the time. Not that I sit in a rocking chair looking out my window, but even during the day, I really feel that the patrols are not what they used to be. And I don't, you know, and there's a question there because the population hasn't changed in Ocean Ridge greatly, one way or another. We don't have Briny Breeze anymore, you know, so, you know, what is the protocol? Is the, you know, when you're in an 8-hour shift, if that's what it is, or a 12-hour shift, is there a protocol to how many times the police officers have to come up and down and do any kind of, you know, like watch on each individual street? Is it broken up? You see them, you know, sometimes on A1A, and I don't know what they've stopped a car for, but there's like I think everyone on goes there. Granted, they drive alone, they don't want to go to, you know, stop somebody just in case, you know, we all need to be safe. But, you know, I can pass it and see it and go back out a half hour later and they're all still there, you know. I don't know what's going on. I'm just saying that it just seems, you know, like why don't, if everything's okay, maybe 2 cars should leave and maybe 2 cars should stay. And getting to the point of see something, say something, and we live on a very close-knit block. Everyone gets along. There's no infighting, and everyone tells everyone what's going on. The Tuesday after the hurricane that weekend, I took off, it was about 8 o'clock at night, to go over to Publix. Didn't realize that everything was still black. Okay, we didn't have electricity, the Woolbright light was still out. I came home, I was there maybe a half hour, I drove back, there was a group of guys on the bridge, younger guys that looked like, doing their bebopping walk. They looked like they had the really baggy pants. I made an assumption that they didn't look like they belonged in the neighborhood. I could have been wrong. And I was like, I wonder if I should call and say something. I pulled into my driveway and I took out my phone and I called and I got the dispatcher. And I said to her, look, you know, I just came back, the town is all dark, I see there's like 4 or 5 guys, you know, kids on the bridge that come from the west heading to the east. And, you know, she was so nonchalant about the whole thing. This was the second time this has happened to me. I don't know if it's the same girl, and she was like, well, what do they look like? I said, I don't know what they look like. I'm just telling you, there were like 5 or 6 of them. They were, you know, doing the tough guy walk, if you know what I mean. And she was like, well, what were they doing? I said, they were walking over the bridge. I mean, it was just like, it was ridiculous. So I finally said to her, you know what? You take this information and you do whatever you want with it. Because we're being told to see something, say something, and I saw something and I'm saying something. In fact, I said to her, well, maybe the cops, you know, somebody could drive by. If they're here to cause problems, they'll be deterred if they see 1 or 2 cop cars drive by. I said, they're just at the peak of the bridge. So, you know, you tell us to see something, say something. we see something, we say something, and then we get this nonchalant, because she was like, all right, well, I'll let them know. That's exactly the tone and the infliction of, what she said. So it's a little upsetting, because Richard's car got broken into. The date of the week, granted, if it's some kind of, group or whatever, but less than 75 feet away, the neighbor gets broken into. They're right across the street. So, like, there's no deterrent for these guys not to be coming back to the same street, the same area, a house or two away, And if you're seeing them, you said you see them getting dropped off, why aren't, are you guys there right away, when you see that happening? I mean, we need some kind of answers. It's very scary. Like I said, I live alone, and, it's really scary. The dog barks. I have a little dog. He barks. I jump out of bed because I don't know. My husband was also a police officer, and I have his blackjack. I have his baton. I have everything around my bed so that, God forbid, if someone comes in, I have something to protect myself as well. And I also walk, when I go out at night, because I take my dog out almost every night between 10 and 10:30 or so, I dial 911. I leave it on my phone, so God forbid if something was to happen, all I have to do is push the call button. So, I mean, I do that too. It's a very good suggestion, and I do that as well. But I just feel like as a community, we need to know, is there more training or like what's going on? Because, like I said, there's so many people, not just on our block, that have felt that, the police officers aren't as seen as much as they have in the past. And I know that, there's 2 slots open, I understand, and that there has been some more, there have been people hired in the last, number of years. And, it's just, I don't know, it's a scary situation when it's happening, one house after another.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
Anybody else for the comment? Okay. Thank you.
You still taking comments about drainage?
Yeah, the public comment, well,
Okay. I've never addressed the commissioner, but I guess it's time. I'm Kenneth Mudd. I'm at 41 Bimini Cove Drive. And I've got really 2 things to say about the drainage. One, I think what Ms. Caldwell said is I'm all in pretty much agreement with that, and there are things that can be done. I've seen fixes like twice already, and they've only made the situation worse in my house, in that area. So I think that's something that needs to be addressed, and I think it can be fixed or made better. And the tides are another issue, but that's something else that will be fixed. But the thing I'm here really for today also is I recently had an issue with the property at 40 Bimini Cove Drive. It was building a wall, and it's causing water to flood onto my property. And I contacted the code enforcement several months ago, and I made them aware of the situation, and then I called back, and they said it was not permitted and they're looking into it. And it was several months after that, and I tried to get a hold of the town commissioner and the town engineer just to find out what's going on, and I've not gotten any information on that. And I'm still having the problems. It happened 3 times since I first notified them, and I don't think the problem's been fixed. So I haven't been able to see any plans or what they're doing. I asked about a permit, and the neighbor said he got a permit, but he doesn't have to show me, and it was never posted. So I'm really concerned on, the cooperation. Like, I don't feel like I'm being part of the town's situation where it's being addressed.
Jamie, you have any update on that?
Yeah, a couple quick things. Mr. Mudd's correct. He did contact us a while back, and that project started out without the proper permits initially, and it was discovered through inspections and site visits. And 40 Bimini Cove Drive, I believe, is the adjacent address. And that property owner came into compliance in terms of submitting the surveys and the plans and the designs more in alignment with what he was actually producing down there. The plans are available to anybody, as are any plans. We don't actually post them online or anything, but they're available as a public record to come in and look at if you want to see how, what's been submitted, what's been approved. The actual resolution of that case just occurred about last week when the town engineer and the building official had gathered all the documents required for that particular application permit. And I believe I just saw letters from them that deemed that it was built in compliance both the town codes and the plans submitted. I don't know if it addresses Mr. Mudd's issue about whether he still believes it adversely affects his property. But that becomes a separate process. If you feel you're being adversely affected by what was built to code, then you can appeal that or come in and we'll start you on that process to appeal that particular issue.
Actually, I'd like to bring these photos in. I don't know if you've seen them, but it clearly shows, and I've shown it to several people, so. I don't know if you've seen them.
Thank you.
And as far as that, there was nothing done to actually correct the problem. They built the wall, and I spoke to when I first moved here, I had to regrade my lot, and I was told by the town engineer, Lisa Trepepe, that I had to put a swale and a berm along the property, so there could be no water going off my property. It all had to be directed to the front of the property, and that is not occurring here. And I questioned that because there was no swale constructed, and there was no berm constructed on his property. Just a wall, and it overflows and gets onto my property, and it's right in the area where my septic tank is, and I've got other drainage issues that was already spoken of, and it's just getting worse, and I just got to do something, and I just don't feel I was made a part of this, and they didn't really consider what I had to say and really looked into the problem, because by what was built was never really solved the problem.
All right, Mr. We'll look into that.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. You gotta come up.
I'm the owner at 40 Bimini Cove. The engineer came out, did a
You
final
gotta do your
inspection.
name and
Laura
address.
Plefjohn, 40 Bimini Cove. I wasn't gonna talk, but I am. We've gone through quite an extensive process, and we got a final inspection, and it is not an issue as far as the city engineer is concerned, as far as the city. And I can show you the yellow paperwork, and we've had it, this has been a process we started in May. We were told that it was okay to start by the police. They told us to stop. We have been in compliance this whole time as far as what you guys have wanted us to do. So I understand there's a drainage issue, but it's not caused by our property. It's this whole issue we're talking about. There's a river that runs right behind our house.
All right, Jamie, well, obviously you have two different versions. You're gonna have to figure out what's going on back there, and let's get some resolution here.
To Mrs. Plofchan's point, they did receive clearance and approval from both the town engineer, also a hired engineer, and the building official on the plans that they submitted and constructed after everything was submitted.
Can I just, Jeff, revisit what Clara Caldwell said? You know, we have this report that's just come in from the engineering firm that, you know, that they qualified for the job. And then they're gonna give us, if we do hire them, they're gonna give us a report, an engineering report on what to do. And that's gonna be coming into Jamie and us. I would think it would behoove the neighborhood to have somebody as a point person from their group to work with Jamie and to work with the commission and be more involved when these reports come in, so that you guys won't be in the dark. You won't feel like you don't know what's going on. So maybe you guys could get together and choose somebody, not at this minute, and then just call Jamie and say, hey, you know, the neighborhood's designated me as the point person. That way you'll have a lot of great communications.
Part of the proposal for the submittal of the RFQ is to garner information from all the area residents, as well as title and water metric information and everything, and aggregate all that to come up with the
Right, it
best
just
solutions.
makes the process simpler if there's a point person.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
Louise Stolitsky at 47 Spanish River Drive. I want to thank Clara Caldwell and the people who live on Bimini and Spanish River Drive for coming here tonight. But I would like, the only thing I would like to say is you mentioned to work with Jamie. We worked with Jamie shortly after he became the town manager. He came over. We discussed the situation with the water. He came with Lisa, and Lisa and Jamie basically walked away. Mrs. Plofchan was standing there, as was my husband, and at that time there was another gentleman whose house is now for sale. They basically walked away and sort of laughed as though, well, what do these people want? So I hope that there will be a better relationship between Jamie and the group on Bimini and on Spanish River Drive.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Ladies first.
Susan Ezekiel, 58 Harbor Drive. I want to start by saying I appreciate our law enforcement personnel and all of you members of the commission. We love living in Ocean Ridge. We've been here 10 plus years. My concern, and the reason that drove me up here to speak, which I normally wouldn't do, is that there seems to be more time spent tonight on water, drainage, which I understand is a big problem and it's a big nuisance for people in their homes. We occasionally have that on our street as well. But it seems like crime, and there was more response to those issues than to the issue of crime. So I feel like crime is a little bit more important than water drainage when we have, seems to be such an increase in crime, not only on our street, but on other streets, on Old Ocean. And I would say that I don't know if it's a change in personnel, if it's a change in the fact that there's different types of residents in the town now, different homes being used for different purposes than strictly residential, but something has changed. And I don't feel like, Chief, I don't feel like it was addressed as completely as the water issues by the commission and the people coming up here. And to your point about, to your comment about increased awareness, and I don't mean to be critical, but I'm just going to cite my occurrence today, which was, I was sitting on our street facing east in my car parked on the side of the street. An officer came around, we were face to face, I waved, I'm pretty sure they recognized my car. He went on down the street, down into the cul-de-sac, down by my house, and I turned around, I followed him, and I was going home. So I was following him behind, and he stopped right in front of our driveway, blocking me from getting in my driveway. So I was sitting there, and I waited and waited, and I figured, oh, he's going to notice me, and he's going to move, or else, I don't know, maybe he's doing something. And he never did notice me. That's not increased awareness, that's being oblivious. So there's a car behind you, and he was blocking my driveway. So I backed up, and I pulled into the other side of my driveway and made this big U-turn to get into my garage, and still, I don't know, but he sat there for like 10 more minutes. So I don't know, it could be a very legitimate reason he's sitting there, but that doesn't seem like increased awareness. That seemed like if he would have known I was there, he would have moved up a little so I could get in my driveway. So I'm just concerned, and I'd like a better response back to, as Ms. Mackin mentioned, what the protocol is, what can be done, because this is a lot of crime in a short period of time, and it's only going to get worse, and it's going to affect more residents.
Well, to give you a town-wide view, because right now we just have a North Harbor Drive view. Last year, it was Ridge Boulevard that was having same problem, and it was addressed. You can back me up on that, Don. He had a robbery at his house. Before that, it was the folks down there off of Beachway, and you heard the resident on Beachway. So what happens is it seems to go in certain areas of town. However, it's not a crime wave throughout the whole town. It seems to happen just in certain areas. Once they get to a point where they're getting chased out of that area, they seem to go another area, and it's not the same folks all the time. It's just the same folks that come from the same area, usually Broward and Dade County. And they come over the bridge, and the first time they did it was mainly off of Beachway because it's such a fast, come over the bridge, you're on Beachway, you're over the bridge on 95 before anybody even knows anything. So what happens is it keeps moving, and because Ocean Ridge is, let's face it, it's it's a fluent town, and people are comfortable in the town, and they do things like leave garage doors open, their cars unlocked, and so on and so forth, because you really think it is a very safe place to be, especially the fact of how many police we have per capita in this town. In fact, our budget is over 70% goes to just the police department. So it is a problem, and by doing things like you're saying with having all the residents know who's not there, who's there, I think it's a great idea.
And as you know, we do that.
But I think that what happens is the people in Ridge Boulevard, they did it. The people over there in Beachway, they did it. And Harbor Drive and Harbor Drive North and South, if they do it, it could be,
We do it.
you know what I mean?
know
So
that.
once that happens, you'll see that it does, and then, you know, a year from now, it's gonna be people, I'm not saying it's going to be, but it may be the people from Sable Island in your same position.
And I understand that,
Or whatever, I'm just saying that, you know, it's just one of those things that happens when you see
But
you
my
see it for the
question
long
my question is,
term.
what do we do about that? We know that's what's happening.
You can only do so much.
I walk in the morning at 6 in the morning, so it's still very dark at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I was walking down A1A the other morning, and an officer was coming out of, I can't remember if it was Hudson or what, and they had the rack of white lights on. And I thought, wow, that's good. They're like really, because instead of just driving up and down the street with your headlights on, you can't see who's in the yard. You could drive right by somebody in the yard and not see him with just the headlights. So, you know, if they maybe use those more often when they are patrolling.
Well, there's actually, what it is,
Or maybe
I'm
somebody
not
goes out
speaking
on
for you, Chief, but I know there's some officers that actually do that, and I think some that don't, because, you know, when you're, my front window, you can see it's like a fishbowl.
Yeah.
And when the light comes by, you're like this, but,
Well, at least you know you won't be robbed.
yeah, no, I got 2 dogs, there's no way to be
Oh,
wrong.
that's true. But I mean, why couldn't that be a general
So-
rule or
So,
something?
Chief,
So, to answer the question as to why or why not we would spotlight, or why not we would drive with our lights, there are 2 thoughts on that. Number one is, it's a positive and a negative. Number one, it's a positive because it lets you know that the police are coming by. It's a negative because it lets the bad guy know that the police are coming by.
Isn't it good that the bad guy knows that, so then they know they shouldn't
Well-
be there?
You know, they also recognize that though we try not to patrol in patterns, it makes you much more comfortable if we patrol in a pattern. And if we pass by, their assumption often is, they just went by and I can commit a crime.
Right.
Earlier in my career, not in Ocean Ridge, I was in charge of a task force in another agency that was specifically targeting high-end nighttime burglaries. And one of the things that I learned, we ended up finally arresting the people that were responsible for it. It took almost 2 years, where it was that they watched our patterns and they watched what we did.
Of course.
And they saw that. So there's pros and cons to every method of patrol that we have, and we try and vary them. I believe I waved to you this morning, if you recall. There was a gray SUV that went by. It wasn't a white one.
No, that wasn't me.
Well, I did wave to you this morning.
That was a couple days ago. I was on foot with the dog.
So, and I see you with the dog. I try and do patrols at various hours and times of the day myself. Number one, because I want to know what's going on in the town, so that I can address problems before they happen. And number two, because I want to know what my officers are doing right and what they're doing wrong. That's the bottom line. Can we do better? Most definitely. Are we doing a good job in patrolling? I think that if you honestly look at the crime statistics for the town of Ocean Ridge and the amount of encounters that we have with those that we end up having to arrest and cite over the past years, I think we are doing a good job of patrolling the town. If there were a pattern to these crimes in any way, shape, or form, because we do problem-based policing, we would flood your area at the time and day that we know that this is a pattern. We're not seeing that. We're seeing someone riding around, most of the crimes that you referred to tonight, the auto burglaries and the stolen cars. We see someone riding around and taking an opportunity when they get it. Oftentimes, when you say, if you see them, why didn't we do anything? We're looking at historic video that's provided by residents to try and determine who's responsible, to identify the players and to identify the vehicles they're using, so that we can work with our partners in federal, state, and local law enforcement to get that information out, because we know that those people are not just coming to Ocean Ridge, okay? We know that there are probably 100 times, crime prevention is almost impossible to measure, by the way. We know that there are probably 100 times for every one that we get hit, that they did come over here and got spooked by somebody or something, okay? It's the one time that gets us every time. You know, I can assure you that we regularly instill in the officers, okay, the necessity for interaction with the community to find out what's going on, continued patrol for areas that we expect that these things may be happening in, but not at the expense of anything else. We have to work within our means. We can't be everywhere 24 hours a day. That's why I always ask you guys to help us out. That's the bottom line. Policing doesn't work if you just expect that the 20 police officers and reserves that we have are gonna be here for you.
Of course.
There has to be a relationship between the town residents and the police department to make it really work. I'm concerned to hear Ms. Manchin's report of the gentleman on the Tuesday night after the hurricane. I'll look into that. I need to be made aware of these things. Many people in this room know my feeling toward policing in a small town. Most of them have my cell phone number. Some of them don't care what time of the day or night it is when they call me about anything, and that's fine. That's how serious I take this stuff. That's the only thing I can do. I can't make you feel any better by telling you that you're, oh, don't be worried, okay? You're gonna be worried when you leave, okay? I can just give you the assurance that I will do my best, and I will demand that the officers that work for you do their best to do that. Your situation, I believe it would probably be this afternoon at the end of the street with the officer that was in the car. Yes, the officers are distracted when they're in their car. They write reports in cars. They have radios, cell phones, and computers. If it's the officer that I believe it was this afternoon, it was probably handling a call at your neighbor's house, because I know that we were there. And yes, they do become distracted. We train on that all the time too. It's very, very difficult to change human behavior sometimes. They often do get focused on one thing because that's important at the moment. And just like I ask all of you to be aware of your surroundings and spatial awareness and to call us and let us know what's going on, if you think that I'm harping on you every newsletter and every tweet that I do and every next door that I do and every email blast that I do, multiply that by 10 and you can be one of my police officers because they hear it from me every day, all day, sometimes on Saturday and Sunday when they least expect it. Okay? We are doing the best we can. I listen to everything that everybody tells me. I try and take that into account. If there's anything that we can do better, I want to hear about it. If you have an idea, I want to hear about it. I might not be able to use your whole idea because there may be a law or something that restricts me from doing certain things that people ask me to do. But there might be something in your message that triggers something else that we can use to deter crime from coming to Ocean Ridge. We live in a very safe and secure town. We live right across the bridge, and I hate to say this because there are representatives from the city of Boynton Beach here, okay? But we live right across the bridge from some fairly high crime areas in this county, okay? In addition, we are in close proximity to I-95, which is the criminal's choice of travel. A lot of the people that we interact with are not from this area. Some of them are. Usually the ones from this area we know. Over the many years that I've been a police officer, and I started in 1981, crime has changed in that it's become increasingly mobile, okay? When I was growing up, because I've given away my age now, the criminals stayed in their own town. They didn't travel and commit crimes elsewhere. And the sheriff, okay, knew, or the chief, knew them and could target them much easier. We've become a very mobile society. It's very easy for criminals to travel. You see it in my emails and my letters to you and my pleas to you about people knocking on your door and what we like to call the term the gypsy criminals is what it is. They're just traveling criminals. That's their occupation. We see it in groups of individuals, in this case, I will just say it, young men, okay, getting together and getting in a car, whether it be stolen, borrowed, or rented, okay, and going out for the purpose of committing crime. Oftentimes, those crimes net nothing but some change. Doesn't make sense to me, but I'm what I would consider a law-abiding citizen, just like you. So we're faced with looking at the changes and trying to address that. And all I can do is assure you that as your police department, unless the crime in Boynton, Fort Lauderdale, or West Palm Beach directly affects you, I don't really care about it. Okay, I care about what happens in Ocean Ridge. It's unfortunate that now I have to worry about what's happening in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Las Vegas today, okay, because we're seeing that more and more. We want to be a deterrence, okay? I would like to have 1 year, how's that, with an absence of crime, okay, and then say that I was responsible for it. I doubt that I can do that. I don't think I can.
Thank you,
That's
Chief.
what I'll strive for. How's that?
Thank you, Chief.
I
Appreciate that.
appreciate it, and I didn't mean to take up so much time, but I appreciate and I support you and your personnel 100%, and I think they do a great job. It's just that in the, recently, I mean, I've lived here for over 10 years. I've never locked my doors when I take the dog for a walk over to the beach, or even put my garage door down. And now I'm battening down the hatches every time I leave the house, and it just started to kind of, weird me out a little bit. So, thank you for your.
Times are changing.
Thank you for explaining how
If
everything.
you have an issue and you see me driving around, stop me. I'd be more than happy to talk to you. I don't care if it's 6:30 in the morning or 6:30 in the
And I'm
morning.
sure he'd be more than happy to talk to you. Thank you, Chief. Yes, sir.
Joe Belmonte, 5600 North Ocean Boulevard. Our community of 50 units has no crime. We have no flooding. All the valves work. We have no mosquitoes. We don't have any no-see-ums. And my wife, having been a police dispatcher at one time, refuses to leave Ocean Ridge because she thinks it's the safest place in the world, and she thinks that Bobby McAllister should get another promotion. And I bequeath the rest of my 3 minutes to somebody else.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, sir.
Brian Rickenback on 34 Harbor Drive North, and thank you all for your service, and thank you. It's the worst job in the world today is being a police officer. We all know that. But yeah, I see some of the crime definitely has came up since I've been here for a couple of years. My side gate's been open, and they go through my house through the back. But I just wanted to ask the chief, how much does he feel like breaking and entering, or is this just a car thing that seems to be happening now? And what would you think is the prime time hours for these entries?
It appears as if what we're experiencing today is auto burglaries and theft of autos that are readily accessible by having keys in them. They're very quick crimes. We reviewed a tape this morning from another area, not Harbor Drive North or South, where we could see that the folks getting dropped off in a cul-de-sac and then literally running down the street trying car doors for what they can, and then jumping in, and they didn't get anything and leaving. That's generally late night hours to early morning hours. And that doesn't mean that we're absent other crime or that we should let our guard down. That's one aspect of what we're doing. We've seen an increase in heroin. We've seen an increase in all kinds of things. I think that we've been very lucky and successful at driving some other levels of crime away.
Well, I noticed in, even closed gated communities, from the south, because I do a lot of work down in Boca and Royal Palm. I mean, they have police at both ends. You can't get in and out of there. And they have, Lamborghinis driving through in the middle of the night. They're just stealing out of those people's homes. So it seems like like you said, it's like a pattern. And once you get wise to them, and then they shift to the next town. And they just keep on going up the coast. And then when you get a little complacent, then they work their way back down. And a lot of these cars are getting shipped off, right in containers, and that's where they're driving down to Fort Lauderdale to send them out. And but the cars, hey, the main thing is that people just want to be safe in their homes. And what can we do to actually help the police? Do we need like better street lights or maybe better lighting on the homes? Because I know there's a lot of dark spots and criminals. When we find them, like room, Richard had, they walked into his garage. Thank God he closed his garage door. He was pretty lackadaisical about that stuff. I told him you're crazy. But he did lock the door, he did lock his garage door. He leaves his keys in the car, which he forgot to tell you. But, and the purse, and the purse was in the, backyard. That was, that's actually, we identified, those, criminals because when we went down the street, the guy had glow-in-the-dark sneakers. He had the little tags on there, and that's how we spotted him actually in the bushes. That's how stupid the guy was. And, but that was a guy that went past the police who got away with it. But we ran this guy down, and we actually did, the police did find the guy in the bushes and did arrest that guy, and I went down and identified him. So it's really helpful for a lot of us to be aware, to help these guys to do their job, and that's part of our job, in the community. Not to put it all on somebody's back that thinks shining a light's gonna do it, because they're just gonna duck, and go on. But I thought maybe I noticed our lights, everybody's got a lot of dark homes, and I noticed that people are out of town, they're not gonna go in their houses anyway.
I think that everything that you can do, and I mean, this is a canned, you're not gonna like my response, but it's the best thing I can tell you, and it's the most honest thing. Everything that you can do to have your home secure, to make sure that somebody else can't come in, closing your garage door when you're not standing in the garage, making sure that the door between your garage and your house is locked even if you're inside, security lights, alarms, and all of those things that we continue to ask you to do. Every one of those things helps. There is no magic silver bullet.
Do pickup trucks with gun racks in the back window help?
It would look out of place in your pickup truck.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment?
No, we're done.
Nancy Hogan, 37 Hibiscus, Mayor.
Nancy.
Hello, Commissioners. Wow, this is wonderful. It's a town hall meeting. We don't even get the, pull off the, what do they do, the gong show when they pull you off? I hope. But I'm gonna be brief, but this brought up several things. I just wanna say that, it's a small town. And that's a wonderful thing, but it's a tough thing. And we have a new neighbor, maybe he's even sitting here, because I don't know what he looks like. I know all my neighbors, but he's not there a lot. And I was in DC, and my husband was sitting on the patio and saw just a little small light in one of his rooms. And we all watch each other, and I'm over by Ridge. And my husband called the police, and we always get a good response whenever we call in the police department. I've never had any issue with that at all. They make me feel comfortable. Well, my husband called the police, and the police came right over, and they went to his house. They came back over and said, he's mad. He's going to press charges. And my husband said, what? My husband was very upset. Then the guy put a nasty note in our mailbox, which is illegal. He didn't even put a damn stamp on it, right, to say that he was going to press charges if we ever call the police again. So these things happen in a small town, and even in a big town. They might be packing in a big town, but that doesn't mean that we don't come here and talk about it and try and work things out. And I would never be concerned about calling the police. The other thing is, Chief, I was the evening chairman of League of Women Voters. I live in a poor neighborhood. They wouldn't come to my house because most of them didn't live in the poor neighborhood. But I always told them, you're safe here because all the bad guys are over in your neighborhood, your house, robbing you. But I guess with the drugs that have happened and so forth and so on, some people can't transverse very far. But that's what I told them. They never came to my house. Never did. I wanted to bring up one thing, and this is kind of selfish, but I'll tell you, I was going to a fundraiser tonight because I lobby in DC and Tallahassee for housing, and I was going for a fundraiser to raise funds so other people can go that might not be able to afford to go. I missed it, but I'll send them a check, because you need to take care of our taxes and how you spend our money, and we'll take care of the legislation on housing issues in decent neighborhoods and safe homes like we're all talking about. But what came up is the minutes, and I didn't have time to print it out, but there were words that I used, and I always had to be careful what was put in minutes, because my first appointment was in 1971. I was Commissioner of Housing in upstate New York. And you're careful on what's on the public record, always. And so when you put it in the minutes and you hand it out to the community and they read what Nancy Hogan supposedly said, we are taped. I thought it was pretty safe by now, but I talked about your increase in the values of housing here and your increase in sales tax, and it talked about me, wanting to, it was all real negative, real negative. So somebody is interpreting what we're saying here now. So I just plead with you, and I say it here so you all will hear, to just talk to staff and think about it, to be very, very careful when you are interpreting minutes, what you're writing down, and putting someone's name on it. And that's the last thing I'm going to say about that, because that was the only point I was going to make. But I'm so glad to see FPL here, and I got to sit by him in Boynton Beach, because that was the other thing. You used the word influence in the minutes on me. I would never say you have to go influence somebody, but you have to build relationships. So we know who to call at FPL. We know who to call at Boynton Beach, because I'm still mad about that light being out for a long, long time. Thank you very
Nancy.
much.
Okay, any other public comment? Well, thank you, everyone. Much appreciated, all the public comment tonight. It was the longest public comment I think we've had in months. But anyway, it was well worth it. All right, so moving on.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I second that.
Motion and second, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. All right, announcement and proclamations. The town hall will be closed on Monday, October 9th, in observance of Columbus Day. All right, next thing we have on tap is public hearing, and Tracy, would you let us know what's going on with the public hearing, please?
An application submitted by the City of Boynton Beach, 100 East Boynton Beach Boulevard, Boynton Beach, Florida, requesting a land development permit from the provisions of Land Development Code, Article 2, Coastal Construction, Section 67-17, Coastal Construction and Excavation Setback Line, Subparagraph A, setback line established, and Subparagraph H, existing structures, to permit the construction of two 18-foot tall solar parking canopies at the Boynton Beach Oceanfront Park, which will replace the existing shade sail structures. The new solar canopies will produce solar energy and shading to park visitors. The south canopy will be approximately 6,140 square feet and will extend a maximum of 155 feet east of the coastal construction control line. And the north canopy will be approximately 7,360 square feet and will extend a maximum of 130 feet east of the coastal construction control line, located at 6415 North Ocean Boulevard.
All right, so tonight, we're basically doing this, approving construction east of the coastal construction line, or so they can get that approval. And once that approval comes, then it comes back to us for a permitting process. That's correct?
That's correct. It goes to DEP first.
Okay.
So once you do that, then a letter is sent that it meets our zoning codes here, and then DEP has to approve it as well.
Great.
And then
Right, so-
it comes back here for
So
building
who's up
permit
first?
process.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. I'm Jeff Livergood. I'm Director of Public Works and Engineering for the City of Boynton Beach. I'll make a brief presentation as the applicant, because frankly, I'm more accustomed to being on that side of the dais or the table as the staff representative. So if I slip into staff mode a couple of times tonight, please recognize that, because this is a strange thing for me tonight. A number of months ago, we started working with Florida Power and Light as part of their Solar Now project for the installation of solar trees. You probably noticed that we had a couple of trees installed. We were very proud of those, because we worked with FPL to not only install the trees, but to install benches and pavers and some educational components as part of those trees, so we could teach the public how solar power works in a photovoltaic cell. So you'll see some educational components. As part of that, we learned that FPL offers solar canopies as well. So immediately the Public Works Director part of me inquired about the potential to install solar canopies at our Oceanfront Park on the top level, immediately adjacent to the seating areas. If you're familiar with our Oceanfront Park, we presently have shade sails with steel poles They were a wonderful idea about 10 years ago from a design perspective when you consider aesthetics, from a public works director's perspective on maintenance. Not so much. The poles rust, and the design standards for the shade sails themselves, as far as being able to withstand wind loadings, didn't prove satisfactory. Our sails have been replaced several times. They're proving to be a nightmare problem for us. When we learned that FPL offers the canopy solution for basically a canopy for parking areas, we found that the canopies are cantilevered and they can cantilever over our seating areas, which are very popular to the public to provide shade in looking through the sea grapes to look to the ocean. And they can also cantilever over the first parking spaces, which would be, I think, a desired component on the part of the public to be able to park under shade. That's the feel-good part. Now, when you want to get into the Public Works Director's perspective, I know that in the next 10 years in my capital improvement program, I'd identified, thank goodness to the surtax, an expense of nearly $250,000 over the next 10 years to paint the poles on a 3-year cycle and to replace the sails. This is a solution for the city of Boynton Beach that allows us to replace the sails with the canopies at no expense to the Boynton Beach taxpayer. This is a 20-year lease agreement the city will be entering into for these canopies. The maintenance of these canopies would be performed by Florida Power and Light as part of their Solar Now program. The city of Boynton Beach would benefit by having reduced capital expenditure, and I think any patrons or users of the park would certainly appreciate the shade. This will certainly enhance that. And lastly, when you think of an oceanfront park, it's where people go to be closer to nature. And I realize that solar panels aren't necessarily nature, but they get us thinking about our impact on the environment and other ways that we can provide power and services to the community. So if you can't tell, I'm kind of excited about the potential here to do this because of what it accomplishes and also to the benefit to my community in Boynton Beach. So I probably sounded more like a public works director than an applicant, and I hope that comes across because I think it's very important that we consider those aspects as we spend public dollars and we try to conserve public dollars. We have to look for every way possible that we can save dollars and try to accomplish our goals. To that end, Florida Power and Light is here to answer questions. Anush or Sophia, they can respond to more of the technical components as it relates to the design.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. And my name is Anush Choksi. I'm with the Florida Power and Lights development team. And thank you, Jeff, for the nice introduction. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with the FPL Solar Now program. It's a program that FPL started about 2 years ago to allow our customers an easy way to participate or contribute to community solar. And what it allows is our customers on a voluntary basis can contribute $9 a month on their electric bill to support solar in Florida and in their local communities. And FPL utilizes those contributions to bring solar to the communities. And so Boynton Beach actually has over 500 participants in the program that are contributing $9 a month. And as a result, we've been able to partner with Boynton Beach, and that's really the synergy between the program and identifying the ideal locations to bring solar into the community and really inspire people and about solar and bring solar awareness to Boynton Beach and the town of Ocean Ridge. And so looking at the presentation, you can kind of get a feel for some of the pictures and things if you haven't already seen the actual solar trees across the street. The solar canopies are similar to the solar trees in that we're using the same type of panels. One of the things that was very important to us was that if we're going to bring a structure, whether it's a solar tree or in this case a solar canopy, to the community, we wanted it to be very aesthetically pleasing. We did not want an industrial looking type structure. We didn't want it to look like industrial or electric sort of infrastructure like maybe our universal scale, which is more of an electric generation facility. We wanted it to be something that would inspire people about solar and allow people to learn about solar. So if you look at our designs with the solar canopies here, it's an aluminum structure with panels that are glass-on-glass panels, and there's a unique railing system that hides all the wires and things like that. So when you're standing down below the panels, you can actually see directly through the panels. And if you actually look at slide number 3, that actually has a real picture of our solar canopy that we have installed in West Palm Beach, and you can kind of see the unique pattern that it creates, and even the unique, I guess, shadow that it even creates down below. So it's a translucent panel as well, so it's not blocking 100% of light, but it still provides, adequate shading and that sort of thing. So, number of benefits to Boynton Beach and the town of Ocean Ridge. Certainly, it's funded by the program participants, so it recognizes the participants that are participating. It educates people about the solar benefits and the application of solar. The designs are, an aesthetically pleasing design, and we're providing these structures at no cost to the city, as Jeff had mentioned, and we're maintaining them for the duration of the actual lease there. And then, of course, it also highlights some of the other sustainability initiatives that, the city and the town may be embarking on as well. So, another thing too is, it's for people that are interested in solar, don't want to necessarily put it on their rooftop or can't put it on their rooftop because they live in a condominium or an apartment, they're still able to participate or make a contribution to community solar with this program, which is sort of a unique program. So as far as the canopies on slide 4 and on this slide here, you can see that we look to identify 2 spots. Really, our focus is around where folks congregate in the community or in this particular park near the boardwalk area to provide shading from that, not just vehicular shading, but primarily like pedestrian shading, and then that also allows them to really learn and get educated about solar. And so what this would actually do is replace the existing shade sails that you see in slide number 4 that are there with these canopies, providing that same shading benefit, just with a different type of structure, maybe more modern or updated structure. So here's a look on the screen here of what that replacement would look like. I'll talk a little more about the structure. The height you see here is that's rendered here is about an 8-foot high. These are the low side here is about 14 feet. And that is so that any delivery vehicles or any sort of food trucks or anything that may happen in the park, no matter what the event, is not going to interfere with the actual structure itself. A typical traffic light.
You're saying it's 14 at the low side and it goes to 18 at the high side?
It goes to at most 18. It probably is at a 7-degree tilt, so probably wouldn't make it directly to 18.
What's the height of the current canopy? Anybody know? The sails?
14 to 18 feet, it varies. Yeah, it's close.
Yeah, so a typical traffic light, just for reference, right, is about 13 and a half feet. So it would definitely not have any interference with that. As far as, it's sort of timely to talk about hurricanes. And the canopy that we have in West Palm Beach, there were no issues with that canopy whatsoever. And that is because we engineer these to the hurricane rating or the hurricane code for the particular area that we're installing these in. So in this area, I believe it's 170 miles per hour, and we're designing these to that particular standard. And then the railing system, and part of that unique railing system also allows us to achieve that hurricane rating to be engineered and meet that particular wind load. And the entire structure is covered with that hurricane rating. So it's not just the aluminum, it's the panels and the aluminum all together anchored to the foundation.
So I had one question. It says here, the canopies will replace the existing shade sail structures. So it's the same square footage that is currently there as sail that's being replaced by these solar panels?
I believe, and I don't have an exact square footage of the sails themselves, but you'll see the sails have an irregular shape. So I believe that the panels will have an increased number of square footage providing additional shade. And that's one of the problems that I see from a shade perspective for the park patron is the shade sails are high. They're irregular shapes, so depending upon the time of the day, you may not always have shade. This is going to increase the shading for the park patrons.
So I guess what I'm asking, see the blue?
Yes.
The blue rectangles?
Yes.
Is that area currently sail, whether or not
Yes.
it's intersecting
Yes.
or not?
That-
So
that area
you're not
is sail.
increasing the volume, because obviously we have homeowners on either side of the beach that are going to be nervous about what you're installing.
Yeah, if you look at the blue of the locations for Canopy 1 and Canopy 2, that square footage of that blue rectangle is larger than the square footage of the existing sails, because the sails aren't consistent in size, and there is some space in between each one of them.
But the actual rectangle.
The
is
footprint,
same
yes,
size,
the entire,
footprint.
thank you very much. The footprint, yes. Now, you also notice that we do have shade sails in the center area that are higher, that are more prominent. we're gonna be taking steps to maintain those in a different way so we can maintain that ambience when you're inside the outside the restroom areas in the snack and the cafe, to make that, to keep that ambiance there.
And there'll be slightly more too, just because of a little bit of the parking coverage as well, because we're also not just extending over the boardwalk, but we're also providing some vehicular shading as well. That's sort of an additional benefit, I guess, from the, what the canopy structures allow, the solar canopies allow.
It still doesn't conflict with what the other gentlemen say. You still get the same footprint.
I think that it'll be slightly larger, because you're also going over the parking lot.
Towards the parking lot line.
Yeah, yeah.
I have some questions. What is the anticipated maintenance so that the new structure doesn't look like the old structure? And who's gonna be responsible for that maintenance? Will there be a regular schedule, again, so that it doesn't get deteriorated like the current structure?
Yeah, that would be Florida Power and Light. We'd be responsible for that. That's actually an aluminum structure. That's white as well. So in the event that, it is powder coated and whatnot, but in the event that it did oxide, we would definitely take care of that. One of the benefits though of aluminum, that it oxidizes white. So you wouldn't have that, the visibility that you see there. Panels, any sort of cleaning or anything like that, we would certainly handle. Normally, our panels, rainwater maintains those just because of the finish and that sort of thing. But if there were any issues, FPL would certainly maintain those, as we have with the solar trees.
Do you plan to have a regular maintenance schedule every 6 months, every 12 months?
Well, we'd be monitoring those, and then, we like just with our just like the solar trees, we have a dedicated individual that's maintaining all of these projects and has an O&M budget for these projects.
And I might add that because the city of Boynton Beach is entering into the lease agreement for the space, we will be monitoring the maintenance of them as well.
So you're gonna be on them when it needs
Absolutely.
maintenance? Okay, and I broached the subject with the FPL rep. Is there going to be a plan sometime in the future to add electric car charging stations there so that they could take advantage of the photovoltaic system?
I don't know that it'll be tied in directly, but the electric car charging component, and I might add, I drive one, so I would have a vested interest, especially if it was free charging. But we do have a charger in Oceanfront Park on the lower level that we have a separate meter on, so we're monitoring the usage. That usage is minimal. Should that usage increase, we would love nothing more than to place a couple more on the top. That would be a City of Boynton Beach expense.
Okay.
But as part of our climate action plan and our sustainability actions, we'd be pleased to do that.
Do you also plan to have electric outlets so people can plug in if they bring electrical things like, stereos and boom boxes and, trucks and things like that?
Yes, not in this location, not in the location of the panels and the canopies. We do have the solar trees and that area where people can plug chargers in for their phones or plug their phones in.
Okay.
Our goal is not to have electrical outlets, because electrical outlets that can be used consistently by the public tend to be a maintenance nightmare as well.
Okay, very good.
So now, the size, the height of these units, you get to your 14 to 18 feet, is that the normal height, or is this something bigger than what you normally do? Like in West Palm, you were talking about something 8 feet to...
Our standard height is 14 feet. because
Standard height is 14?
We want to, not have any conflictions and kind of maintain that same street light heighting. So our standard canopy is 14 feet, and with a 7-degree tilt.
Okay.
And maybe I missed in the presentation, where's the captured energy going?
It goes to the grid. Yeah,
No, it goes to the grid, so it's not going to fuel the snack bar and all that?
No, interestingly, the solar trees, we negotiated that with FPL when we installed those. The power fed our side of the meter. In the solar canopies, they'll go direct, the power will go to the grid.
So as an aside, as a benefit to Ocean Ridge, because...
Yeah, there you go. I know where you're headed.
I mean, obviously, but most folks go to their respective crossovers and beach. Is there any consideration you guys would give us on our fire contract if we agree to this?
I would like to point out I'm the Director of Public Works and
That's
Engineering.
I'm sure you have the mayor's ear, don't you?
I was looking for more for getting the power over here.
Yeah, the building. All right, any other questions?
The only concern I have is the wind rating, and you said that was 175.
Well, it can be in Miami-Dade, it's 175. We'll meet the code here, which I believe is 170. And these structures, the canopies themselves are from a manufacturer called Lumos, and they're tried and tested canopies. They're actually in the Bahamas. I think somebody made the joke that, maybe it's the only standing in the Bahamas now, which isn't actually an amusing joke at all. But it's definitely a tried and true structure and can meet the ratings.
That rating includes the individual solar panels that are on top of the canopy.
Yeah, it's the entire structure. So the panels are not like a flangel type structure where those would blow off and then the structure would be sinking. It's the entire canopy and panels that are going to meet the wind load
Not like a shingled roof.
of the code, correct. And the 7-degree angles actually helps facilitate that. Like with the solar trees, we didn't go beyond a 15-degree angle to ensure that they met the wind load rating that was required for this area.
Well, if you do get a DEP's approval, it comes back here to Ocean Ridge, Mandy, you'll be looking at that quite closely, won't you?
Yeah, our building official is pretty stringent on that when they submit their permit application at their NOAs, especially meeting the Miami-Dade window requirements.
Okay.
And we'll definitely, we get those requirements, we meet those code requirements. So is there any other questions or concerns about that? I mean, I can go into more detail on the wind rating.
What category storm did the one in the Bahamas go to?
I believe at that point in time, it was probably a category thing. I don't know the exact specifics of those, but those, we were told did not have any issues. They weren't our canopies in the Bahamas. They were actually the manufacturers. But our canopy in West Palm Beach did not have any issues, and I believe that was a category 2, right? So.
All right. Any other questions? Anyone make a motion?
I move that we approve the application submitted by the city of Boynton Beach as set forth in agenda item number 4, contingent on DEP approval and meeting all the zoning and building requirements upon actual building permit submittal and review.
There's second. Any other discussion? Public comment? Betty? I see your finger sticking up over there.
Betty Bingham, 1 East Ocean Avenue, Ocean Ridge. I have a number of problems. It appears we want to be a quiet, low-grade community, and we're delighted to have the people come over and go to the beach. It seems like they're slowly turning the beach into a Coney Island with more and more facilities, more and more structures. That's one thing. Number 2, with that structure up there, when the rain really is heavy, where is that rain going to go as it pours off the roof? Are they going to have gutters and wells and things to let it run down? That's a big structure to have water running off onto the sand with very little permeability because of where they have it. And I think we ought to, they're going to build us up at that end, they're going to build us over here. I think we ought to try to make them keep it a beach.
Thank you, Betty. Anyone else? All right, back to
Mayor?
the commission. Yes,
Mayor?
ma'am.
Connie Sophie, 6530 North Ocean Boulevard. I don't usually speak in front of people, but I get very nervous. But we have a beautiful beach over there. And aesthetically, this structure, to me, would be the worst thing we could do. To look at something this big and all of this metal that it looks like from those pictures, is that something that we want in our city, in our town? Personally, I don't think so.
All right, thank you. Okay, do you want to read Jeff Eater's thing in the record, please?
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen of the commission, I'm sorry I cannot attend tonight's meeting, but as an adjacent homeowner, I have concerns regarding the design I have seen in the rendering of the proposed solar panels at the beach. The large sail area at the top of the dune is very vulnerable to being blown over and even dislodging and blowing into neighboring structures and power lines. A beefed-up support structure and relocating the panels to the lower part of the parking lot may be a better solution because of the strongest of the winds would be blocked by the dune. significantly reducing the liability to the town if it would fail.
Thank you. All right, back to the commission. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, thank you. All right, moving on to our next. All right, ordinance number 628, I'm sorry, first reading of ordinance number 11, 627. Jamie,
You
you
got it back
wanna-
up to number 5.
Got to do the reports. Oh, I was skipping through all that. All right, reports, Tom?
I promise I'll keep it,
Moving on.
I'll keep it really
Good
brief, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Just on town manager's report is in your backup. I just wanted to highlight 2 things. One is we're meeting, the second item on my report is about Phase 2 paving for fiscal year 18. We're meeting with the pavers this week, the contract paving company. And as reiterated to you earlier, the 2 streets that were left off last year's phase paving, which were Beachway and Island Drive South, are the 2 priority streets coming forward onto the Phase 2 paving in FY18. We're going to sit down with the engineers and the paving company this week and vet through the rest of the list, compare that to the appropriation for paving, and come up with the priority streets to present to you for the program probably as early as next month to okay that and move forward.
Can you alert me to that meeting with the engineer? I'd like to attend.
Yes, I believe it's on Wednesday. I'll confirm the time for you. The other thing I wanted to point out to you quick, because it's not in your backup, you received it today, as was talked about earlier under public comment. We received the one and only response to the RFQ process for an engineering study on Inlet K. You have the binder in front of you. I just want to get some, I know you haven't had a chance to go through it yet. The cursory review of the binder indicates that this is a qualified firm, but receiving only one, I want to try to garner some direction as to whether you'd like to review it, postpone it, change it, give alternative direction to move forward, or engage this firm to propose a project to study and price what it would cost to look at the Inlet K system, as you heard about earlier.
Well, I think the first thing you do is make sure they're qualified to actually give us a bid. And then once you do that, if they are, then they should give us a bid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you actually, I had a chance to go through the package. They've got some pretty impressive projects they've done in the county for some very large-sized towns.
And especially in the road drainage and whatnot.
Yes.
I went through the package also, so.
They certainly seem to have the credentials to be qualified. We'll double-check that for a technical qualification, but the next phase with your, if it's your consensus, would be to engage them in proposing the actual, what the project would look like and how much it would cost. And bring that back to you.
Bring it back to us.
Now, is the direction to, if that can come back with a proposed agreement as well?
An estimated cost.
Well, I mean, they will go ahead and give us the estimated cost, but I guess my question is, when we come back with that, do you want us to have an agreement ready at that point in time, or do you want us to get direction from you to say, yes, move forward, and then we'll bring an agreement back to you at the following meeting? I'm just trying to figure out your I guess, timeline here.
The latter would be my suggestion, because we may see things that different, may want to add something or subtract something from that agreement.
She'll change the agreement.
Okay, thank you.
Is that a consensus from everybody? All right, Jamie, you got all that?
Okay. We'll bring that back to you next meeting for a proposal from this company.
Yes. Correct. Okay.
That's all on my.
But I think
Thank
you were going to mention Hurricane Irma, but since you didn't, I'll jump in.
Oh, that's right, Commissioner.
That's your,
You wanted to talk about Irma.
So there's a nice note here from Jamie that the town really cooperated, citizens of the town cooperated, and everything worked out as best it could in a bad situation. In the aftermath, I was gone for a couple of weeks, but when I came back, I had 3 different citizens that had lengthy conversations with me about not having power, or not having telephone, or not having Comcast due to trees that had fallen into the power lines or into the telephone or Comcast lines. So what I would like to do with the commission's agreement is, and I've already spoken to Brian, I've already spoken to Jamie, is to ask our town attorney, Brian, and our town manager, Jamie, to investigate the policies and rules of FPL to see if we can determine, just like we did with the coconut trees being trimmed before the storm season, to have the homeowners whose trees are going to cause their neighbors not to have any power, telephone, and Comcast for weeks after the event, to see if we can find out FPL's policies for trimming that. Is it only FPL that can do the trimming, or can the homeowner actually hire an FPL-approved firm? And then before the hurricane season begins, the police chief and the town manager would actually drive every single street in town and check out which properties or which trees are going to cause a problem during a storm. And those homeowners would be instructed to trim those trees.
All right, so don't we have something like that already, chief?
I think we
We already do that.
We already do that?
Well, it didn't work, obviously.
We haven't enforced
Yeah,
the
but-
rules for a number of years.
All right,
as
well, let's,
far as-
chief, in a,
Every year, at the beginning of hurricane season, one officer with this agency is tasked with doing a townwide survey. We take pictures, and then we notify the homeowner by a letter to trim those trees out of the wires. There are complications on occasion because FP&L will not allow anyone other than a certified FP&L tree trimmer to trim within 10 feet of any wire. So the enforcement becomes difficult. Most of the time, if the resident recognizes the tree as theirs, they will take care of the problem or try and contact FP&L licensed tree trimmer and have them come in. This year, on several occasions, I know that there were residents who had already contacted FP&L, made arrangements for that to happen, and it just didn't happen in time for Irma. The issue of maintenance with FP&L, I can tell you from what they have advised us already, is they do mainline service line maintenance every 3 years, and they've said that they do residential service line maintenance, which would be something in our area, every 6. That's their stated maintenance schedule. I can tell you from looking at things in town over the last 12 years that that hasn't been the case. So I don't know how you influence FP&L to come in and trim the rights of way and the areas that the residents aren't supposed to be trimming close to those wires.
Well, so my point is still what my point was. If we're already doing this, then something's not working. Because there were people without phone and Comcast in particular for 2 to 3 weeks after the storm, due to the fact that property owners' trees had fallen onto the wires. FPL would rush out and perhaps cut the offending limbs to get the power back. But all this could have been prevented if these trees had been cut earlier. So if we're alerting the homeowners, but then the homeowners can't get the tree service there in time, then we need to alert the homeowners earlier, I would think.
We start in June.
well, and
So
Steve,
why doesn't it work?
And, well, I think that part and parcel is because we have many homeowners who don't want to defoliate their trees, number one. We often get, after those letters go out, we sent out 97 letters this year, I believe. Of those 97, I would say that 50% of those people contacted me directly because my name's at the bottom of it and wanted to know why I was after them. And they disagree with the ordinance in town. And we still say, well, you have to abide by the ordinance and cut the tree. And then we have to let what is allowable to happen. And the idea is to gain compliance, not to push enforcement. We've had a good track record over the past few years of doing that. When Hurricane Francis, Jean, and Wilma came through, the town enacted that particular ordinance as a response to all of the trees that impacted that. Okay? That was almost 12 years ago. Okay? 11 years and 11 months. Okay? In that time, a lot of things have grown back. I think that Irma helped us get some of that stuff done. As far as Comcast and AT&T, that is a different animal. With all due respect to everything that everybody says, they're non-responsive to us requesting maintenance on their lines and their properties, and FP&L will not cut below and under that. They only clear far enough to get FP&L lines. We know that from the action and inaction that we see.
Right, I guess I'm being a little stronger than you, Chief. If you say you're going for compliance, well, if you don't get compliance, and it sounds like perhaps 50% of the town.
We work to get compliance, and for the most part, we do. Those that we don't, we take to code enforcement. It still doesn't resolve the issue of getting the trees cut most of the time, but so we've worked toward compliance more than we have enforcement on this issue because we understand that we need to get the people that are responsible for the tree. We often get an argument on whose tree it is also, by the way.
Yeah, sure.
When you're talking about the trees that are going down easements, where does it come from? It's not mine, it's not my neighbor's. And so, in this delicate game of not being heavy-handed, we have to determine whose tree it is. And sometimes that's visually, and sometimes that's with a survey from the town records, that we're asking police officers to go and look at that. So there is a juggling act that goes on, and it's a dance between us and the residents to get compliance, and that's what we're looking for. I happen to know some of the hardest hit areas in town because I drove this town at least twice every day from Friday before Irma until just the other day, Saturdays and Sundays included, to see the progress that we were making and to watch what was being trimmed. And I think that a lot more people are aware of it now. In the past, it won't hurt me, it's not my problem. All of a sudden, it became reality, and we're seeing that being self-correcting.
Steve, I got a question for you. Obviously, FPL has something set up where you have to actually call a certified tree trimmer to trim within 10 feet FPL lines, but is there anything for Comcast and AT&T that says you have to do that?
Not to my knowledge.
So, I mean, at that case, and we're actually talking about two different tree trimming rules at this point. One is for FPL and one is for Comcast and AT&T.
And we treat utility lines or utility lines.
Two different
They
tree
actually
trimming services.
came down our neighborhood, both FPL and somebody
Right.
from Comcast, I think, and cleared out trees. FPL cleared out trees, and then a few days later, it was, I think it was Comcast.
Yeah, it was Comcast.
Came by and cleared out more stuff. I don't know how many.
FPL won't
What I'm
clear.
saying though,
I
if,
don't know how many neighborhoods they went to, but they did that,
but
a
if
few
there's
days
no
before.
rule for a Comcast and AT&T, if you follow my thinking, then the town can be a little more stringent
Right.
on those folks to cut down the stuff that's closest to those lines.
We address utility lines as utility lines. It doesn't matter whether it's electric, telephone, or cable. If there are trees within the wires, we send the same letter, and we do the same enforcement and compliance process.
Yeah, but then there's no excuse though from the homeowner because they have to get an FP&L certified contractor. In this particular case, if it's a Comcast or AT&T and you don't need that certified contractor, you can call any contractor as a tree trimmer and cut the darn tree down.
Yes.
So,
Or
you know what
they
I'm
can
saying
do it
is you're
themselves, and they
eliminating the
do.
excuses of why not
If
cutting
you're
it down.
clearing out for Comcast, you're automatically clearing out for.
FPL.
Well,
A lot of times
not
a lot of times
particularly.
the lines
Yeah,
overlap.
So, what I'm saying is that.
Usually they're lower.
It can dovetail a lot easier by going to the Comcast AT&T route first, and then it'll affect the FPL just by default.
The Comcast that we're cutting behind Mr. Bonfiglio's property and down that stretch was being accomplished because they had put in 2 new poles and they were being required to move the poles a little bit further south and one of them a little bit further to the west. And so that affected the trees along the Comcast line that Florida Power and Light had already come and trimmed on, and then the Comcast guys came down and cut lower. If it hadn't been for the movement of those poles, I doubt seriously whether they'd come through at all.
Yeah.
Just quickly to the commissioner's point, I think we can work with the police department in this next cycle coming up for next year's season and do a little more communication work through newsletter, through public education, and then mandate maybe a little on top from this dais and from the administrative side to augment what the chief's doing and hope to get better outcome and compliance.
The other area that really needs to have attention paid to it is the coconut palms, which on Ridge Boulevard were not trimmed or not trimmed satisfactorily this year. And if you went down Ridge Boulevard, you found a lot of those coconuts on the ground, and those, fortunately, we didn't have the wind that would make those really a projectile that could do any damage, but a number of them came off. And so the palms, the coconut palms definitely needed to be trimmed, especially on public property and on residential properties where they could cause harm to other residents.
Okay, anything else for Jamie? Thank you, Jamie. All right, Mr. Attorney.
The only thing that I have, I will be contacting you all. I'll probably be seeking another shade meeting involving the Wolf Owl case. So I hope to do that sometime in the month of October, but it kind of depends also on the schedule for our outside counsel, but I'm waiting to hear back from them.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Any questions for Brian? Thank you, Brian. Chief?
Two things of importance. We are currently engaged with our employees on doing a beach cleanup. After Hurricane Irma, their surveillance of the beach showed a lot of trash that came washing up. They've asked that I authorize them to do a community-based beach cleanup. We are trying to schedule that for Saturday, September the 14th. We will put it out in the email.
September the
newsletter.
14th?
I'm sorry, October the 14th. I'm a month behind you, sorry.
You mean next year?
Yeah. October the 14th, Saturday from 9 to noon. Over at Oceanfront Park, we're appointing, and they're going to allow us to use the park as a staging area. A town event, asking the residents to come out, maybe have some hot dogs, hamburgers, use some of our ATVs and stuff to get some of those big items off the beach that are going to affect everyone. Secondly,
That's really, really cool of the police department.
second, the Coffee with a Cop is going to be scheduled for early November. For those of you who remember, it is the community meeting coming to the police station. Come by, have coffee, have a bagel, talk to us, let us know in a less public setting where you don't have to speak at the microphone, any of your concerns, and we'll do more of those as we go in the season. Look in the newsletter and watch your emails and go on Nextdoor so you can get that information. In addition, the monthly report for August is in your package. It is on the website for any of the public that wants to see it every month. Have any questions for me? I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you.
Any questions
Chief,
for the Chief?
I would just like to recognize Investigator Pilin and David Johnson from the Maintenance Department. I got stuck with a problem brought to me Sunday night with a handicapped individual in a scooter that had died, an electric scooter that had died. And that scooter ended up behind my house for a week until we could finally get it removed. And I just have to say that the services that are offered to people in those situations are deplorable. I mean, this guy was supposed to have the scooter picked up at 10 o'clock in the morning. At 12:30, they sent the wrong type of vehicle. We couldn't get it out. We couldn't get the scooter in the vehicle. And fortunately, I talked with the chief, and we had two people from Ocean Ridge come over, and we took care of the problem. So I want to thank those guys for getting involved and getting that scooter out of my backyard. I appreciate it very much.
I will pass that on.
Thank you.
All right. I'd like to hear more of that story. It's like, what?
It's a very interesting story.
It was an interesting
Any other
week.
questions
We
for
did
the
dog CPR and scooter deliveries. It
Oh,
was okay.
boy. Any other questions for the chief? Hey, thank you, chief. Okay, moving on to action items, budget amendments. Jamie?
I'll keep this brief. Thank you, Mayor. This is just to put on your radar screen. We're not going to ask you to make specific budget amendments tonight. I just wanted to bring them to your attention. We'll bring the list of adjusting budget amendments to you at the November meeting. And part of that is because staff and accounting is still involved with closing down the year-end figures, and there are still items coming in and moving around. But I wanted to give you a flavor of, as per the audits indicated in the past, when something exceeds the projected budget amount, we have various tools available to us to correct that at the year end for budget purposes. And that, we'll see that in several categories this year, mainly because of overtime and other expenditures that were expended for hurricane mobilizations, et cetera. We actually had 2 hurricanes occur in the last fiscal year, and reimbursement for those fees has not even occurred yet through the FEMA process, even on Matthew, the first one. So those items are being still received and trued up. In the case of town manager, town clerk, general government, law enforcement, garbage and solid waste, public works, and other physical environment, which includes the engineer. There are items where certain line items within the budget went over the budgeted amount, but there is more than enough money in the fund to offset that. So that will be the purpose of the budget amendment. We'll say this line item went over. We're going to propose that we take it from this other line item in the same fund and move it with an official legislative action as a list to true up the budget for final closing and then auditing. In, I believe, every case, except the town engineer line item that is currently proposed for an adjustment under budget amendment, there is more than enough money in every fund to cover the amendment. In the case of the town engineer, and this was a note on the auditor's comments last fiscal year, when we had big run-up in building and engineering functions for plans review and drainage and permit applications and all the related costs, those numbers ended up being more than budgeted. So we neglected last year to make a budget amendment for those adjustments and values. And so I'm putting it on your radar this year that we'll do that in November, and we'll make a legislative line item adjustment for each and every one of those values that might change, so that we can close out FY17 and turn it over to the auditors. I'll be happy to answer any questions, but I also would point out our next agenda item is commentary and questions from the auditor, who's here tonight. If
Well, I just have a question for you. The proposed circulated just to the meeting. I don't have that. Do you
No,
have
we
that?
didn't bring forward specific recommendations for this meeting. We're
All
going
right,
to
so
go ahead
then-
and do them in November.
So then this is an
This is no longer an actionable item other than to make you aware of it, and in November, we will action on it.
Okay.
We're
Can we just move it to the
continuing it to
meeting? Anything to do
November.
with your management report? Okay. Mr. Bennett, so happy to see you again. You always give us good news when you're here.
Hi. It's good to see you again. I'm a little late this year. I apologize, I was unable to attend the meeting where the initial presentation was made. I hope my colleague, Mr. Morton, was able to answer most, if not all, of your questions. And I really don't have a presentation. I'm more here to answer questions. I don't want to put you through the same thing he put you through, so. Bore you to tears, but.
I think we and I have been in communication a lot over the budget and all those issues, so I don't think I have any more questions for you. I'm pretty satisfied
Okay,
with the ultimate outcome, okay?
great. Anybody else, or?
Do you have any suggestions for how the town goes about doing its budget?
I didn't know there was anything wrong with the way they were doing it now. By way of explanation, last year, I'll talk a couple of numbers. It's page 58 in the report, but there were 2 departments within the general fund that were over their budget. It's building and zoning was 37,000 over, environmental was 11,000 over, but the total fund was 450,000 under. So it's not like you exceeded your total budget. There's just a couple of line items didn't get moved. And really, there were 3 comments in the report. One of those problems caused the budget to be over. State law allows you 60 days after year end. Essentially, you got to amend your budget by the end of November. And what had happened was you had a computer crash during the year, and one whole month of transactions didn't get posted. And they didn't get that computer crash, the accounting fixed until after the 60 days. It looked great. You only had 11 months worth of expenditures in there. And then when you put the 12th month in, well, doggone, we got 2 that's over. Rats, oops, it's more than 60 days, we can't amend it. So, it was kind of one of those, it's better to be lucky than good sometimes. Just so happens, that software, which I'm not crazy about, and I understand it's had some updates to it, it's a little bit better now than it was before, but you could only post stuff to the general ledger once a month. So you had a whole month of transactions to get posted at one time. You just happened to get a power failure or some sort of computer crash in the middle of that post. And the stuff, you lost some or all of it. And then you had to bring in, somebody else to fix this thing. So a little bit of bad luck caused that problem with the budget. If that power surge or whatever had occurred 2 hours sooner or an hour later, or, you would have never known it, and they would have known when they got to the end of September, oh, geez, we're a little bit over here, and they could have made that amendment in October or November, and that wouldn't have been a problem. So I don't know that there's a problem with the way you do the budget, but you got a little bit unlucky with your computer and your software there.
Thank you.
So bottom line is, we're now in compliance with all the statutes regarding our 2016, 2017 budget, correct?
2017, I haven't looked at that
Well,
yet.
2016, 2016.
2016, yeah, this is a really ticky one, okay. I have to cite it because Florida statutes say that whatever your legal level of control is, in your case, it's your department, that if you exceed that, I'm supposed to report it in the management letter. Over the last 30 years, I don't know how many of these I've reported, and nobody ever does anything about them. Nobody cares. They say, I got to report it, but nobody reads it, So it's a kind of a no harm, no foul. Clearly, you had $450,000 left over from the budget, that you could carry forward to the next year. If I don't do that, the only time somebody does look at it, but they don't do anything about it. The Auditor General of Florida, they do a desk review on every governmental audit. They got some guy sits there with a checklist and goes through all the things. And I know they look at that because I've had them call me up and say, hey, you missed it. They went over the budget there. And what they do in that case is they will email me a letter that's an addendum to the management letter, and they say, print this on your letterhead, sign it, and send it back to me. So there's no discussion, it's just thou shalt. So even if it's ticky, these were small amounts, and the whole fund was well within budget. If I don't do it, the Auditor General is gonna call me up and, wrap me over the knuckles, it's like, otherwise I wouldn't have cited it. It's not like you're 500,000 over budget, you're 450,000 under in total, and you just administratively didn't move the thing because you had a computer crash. So, that's not exactly we're not talking about a major felony here. This is just
Not a hanging offense, huh?
Yeah, it is not a hanging offense, even for a hanging judge. This is just bad luck more than anything else on that one,
So in general, our fiscal health?
You guys, fiscally, you were fine. The numbers were great. There were 3 comments in the report for this year, and historically you've had very few. Every once in a while you get one, but very, very few. And 2 of these 3 were all related to the same issue. Had you not had the computer crash, I wouldn't have mentioned the software. We're not software auditors. We're here, the auditor's job, their primary function is to audit the financial statements and issue an opinion on those. Because it's a governmental entity, we get stuck with an additional task. That is, there's another report other than just the report on the financial statements. Government auditing standards says we have to issue this report on internal control and compliance. You got a clean opinion in that one. You got a clean opinion on the financial statements. The Auditor General of the state of Florida says you have to put this management letter in. That's the 3rd report. And we mention those things in there because he gives us a hard time if we don't. And there's a 4th report now that the Auditor General requires. It's on compliance with investment. Florida statutes state the kinds of investments that a municipality, a governmental body in the state of Florida can invest their surplus funds in. So they make the auditors check that. It's a 1-page report, the very last page in the document. Again, you're in compliance. Numbers-wise, things are great. I put the comment in about the software. Yeah, it's a legacy product. It's one of the more irritating governmental accounting packages I've ever seen in the last 30 years, but my job is not to come audit the software, and this condition existed for all the years we've been here. And I never mentioned it before because I've had these conversations with prior management, and, and changing software is painful. The software itself is easy. It's the conversion from one to the other is where the rub comes in. And they were the opinion, they would rather put up with the idiosyncrasies of this program because they'd been using it a long time and they knew how to get where they needed to go than they had to change. One, it cost you money, and two, it cost a lot of additional work and headache on their part. So, and they managed to get things done. This time, because of a little bit of bad luck, you weren't able to get things done. So I mentioned it. I still think you'd be better served if you change software, but that's not really my job to decide. You're aware now of the shortcomings that the program has, and that's a policy decision for the town. Between the governing body and management, if they want to adopt some other software, great, if you want to purchase that. But there's nothing in the accounting rules or the auditing rules that even says you got to have software. You just got to have records that we can audit. And when I first started, a lot of people didn't have computer software. They had paper ledgers, and that works just fine. I think I've tried to do this more as a service to say, hey, this is not the greatest software I've ever seen. It has some idiosyncrasies that makes it difficult on management. It's hard to get to where you want to go. And it's particularly hard because new management, they come in, you would never expect the problem you have with this thing. I've never seen it in any other software. This is a unique product, and as I understand it now, it really is a legacy. They have newer versions that they want to sell you that probably have eliminated these problems. But you don't really have to change unless you want to. That, again, that's a policy decision. I'm taking this out next year, whether you get new software or not. I've made you aware of it, and if you feel like it's worth the money,
all right.
It's your nickel. You can spend it however you see fit. Yeah.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Bennett? No. Thank you, sir. Thank you for staying.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Hopefully I'll be back a little earlier next year.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
All right. Town Commission meeting date changes, 2018.
Yes, sir, there's a couple dates that conflict that come up with our normal Monday, first Monday scenarios. In 2018, they will include January 1st, New Year's Day, and September 3rd, Labor Day. In the past, the Town Commission has moved their standing commission dates usually to the following Monday to accommodate those date conflicts. So it would be suggested, perhaps for a motion, if you wanted to make the January regular commission meeting on the 8th of January 2018, and the regular Town Commission meeting of September 3rd on September 10th to accommodate those holiday changes.
All right, does anyone make a motion?
Can we discuss this 1 second? Does anybody here have kids in school?
Yeah?
Oh, there you go. Are you definitely, everybody's back by the 8th?
Oh, yeah. You mean back in college? Yeah, they're back by the 8th.
They're back.
Mhm.
Okay.
If not, kind of make them go back.
Kick 'em out. All right, I move that we reschedule the regular town commission meetings for January 1 and September 3, 2018 to January 8 and September 10, 2018 respectively.
Second.
Motion and second, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, now we're on to number 11, the first reading of ordinances, 627. Tracy?
Ordinance number 627, an ordinance of the Town of Ocean Ridge, Florida, amending its Code of Ordinances by amending Chapter 63, General and Administrative Provisions, Article 4, Site Plan Review Procedures, Section 63-51, Types of Applications, and enacting Section 63-56, Concept Development Plan Review, to provide for concept development plan review of new construction, providing for codification, repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, and an effective date.
Brian, you want to lead off with this one?
Okay, just very quickly, you all have seen various versions of this ordinance in the past based on the last conversation that I had with you all. I was directed to go ahead and draft the ordinance to have it be mandatory for someone to appear in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission if it's new construction on single-family or two-family homes, or if it exceeds 50% of the cost or square footage of the existing structure. However, the comments, if there are any comments made by the Planning and Zoning Commission, will not be binding on the applicant, and that it is just something that the zoning official can take into consideration. But whatever they say, however they, whatever comments they have, they are not binding. It's just something that the zoning official will be there at the meeting, and he can, understand, I guess, listen to those comments. However, the code provisions will be the actual thing that governs whether or not approval will be given by the zoning official. Now, some of the concept items that the Planning and Zoning Commission would look at as far as a development, it would be the relationship of the building to the site, the building to, or the building and site to adjoining areas, and also the building design. So those are just some of the items that the Planning and Zoning Commission could review.
Jerry, you want to weigh in on this a little bit?
Sure, thank you.
And also, I forgot to also say this did go in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission on September the 25th, and they did recommend approval.
Thank you. Jerry Garay, 130 Island Drive, and allow me to fix the mic first.
Should have picked that up.
I think I'd like to just share with you a little bit of background, because I consider this one of the more important issues or items that has come before P&Z over the last many years, because it really changes the flow of the process with regard to building permits in the town. So we studied this very carefully over the course of several meetings and deliberated, as Brian knows, at length. And we noted in particular a couple of things. Number one, there's an increase in home construction in the town of Ocean Ridge. And it is increasing coming up the coast, from Boca Raton to Highland Beach to Delray to Gulfstream to Ocean Ridge. And we happen to be one of the last stops along the way, so we're going to be impacted more and more because we've got homes that can be redone and a few lots remaining. Plus, and even more important, we observe that there is a greater variety of housing styles today than there has been over the last 10 years. We're seeing, you drive up and down A1A, Highland Beach, and Delray, and you see a lot of different contemporary and semi-contemporary homes. So that's something that we haven't had to contend with in the past. Next item is, we are the only, according to Mark Marsh, we are the only coastal community, and probably the only community in the county, that doesn't have some sort of oversight over style construction. So because of that, we're very careful not to kind of jump into being dictators. What we wanted to do is take a first step. And the first step, as Brian shared with you, was to really look at things like harmony and scale, not nitpick little bits and pieces of detail, but kind of really take a look and make sure that these new styles, the massing, the proportion, the harmony with the neighborhood work. And then try to work through any issues as a good neighbor policy, and not come down as dictators, as I used the word recently, moments ago. With all that in mind, after many meetings, we very strongly recommend that this be passed by the commission. And I want to note that this is a preliminary first step. We may come back to you in 6 months and say, hey, this isn't working, it needs to be mandatory. Or we may come back to you and say, it doesn't work, period, because nobody's listening to us, and it's just an exercise in futility. But I think it's worth trying. And I'd be happy to come back to you in 6 months and say, here's what it looks like. Good, bad, needs a little polishing. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
Manny, as our zoning official, could you come up and give us your opinion, please?
Manny Palacio, zoning official for the town of Ocean Ridge. As Jerry just stated, I think it is a good idea that there is another entity looking at what I'm looking at with the changes that are coming into our town under the construction. So I feel that that we're headed in the right direction. Other municipalities do have it. One has it with teeth. The town, Palm Beach Shores, for a fact, does have it in their ordinance that it has to be approved by their architectural review committee before it can go on to zoning, before it passes. So I think there are options that we can follow and see where this goes. I think maybe giving it a little time and see where it goes within the next 6 months and go from there. But I think it's a good idea. I'm for and in favor, because I do run into a lot of gray area, and like I said before, Karen was pretty well the one that kind of directed me. Here now I'll have you folks telling me, I think this is where we want to go, and I'll follow that.
Thank you. Any questions for Manny? No? All right.
Thank you.
I got a comment.
Sure.
I thought this was a reasonable compromise, especially if we do it, because, I mean, you have both sides, you know, coming from both sides. They want any, the other side says we want, you know, strict. But one thing I'm a little uncomfortable with is we're talking about colors in here. And I think that's a little too much micromanaging if you're looking at colors. So I'd like to see the colors control of the colors taken out. Everything else I'm okay with, like I said, as a compromise. That's my thoughts.
Brian, perhaps you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you'll be encouraged, but you won't be ordered. In other words, if you want to go to a color, that's your right.
Yeah, but it does say color should be harmonious, representative, and, you know, harmony and architectural.
Remember we had this discussion at the
Yeah,
beginning, legally, Brian set it up.
I mean, somebody could have a purple house, it doesn't matter. A code does not dictate that you can't have that, so there's nothing that Manny can look at to say, I'm not going to approve this color. The board can, and once again, it's up to you all, whatever you want to have in here. The board can look at this, and this allows the board to make comment on it, but I am not aware, and they can make comments and say, well, I'm not that crazy about this color, that color, or whatever, but if the applicant doesn't want to change their color, then I'm not aware of anything in your current zoning code, you know, that Manny could look at to say, no, I'm not going to have this color unless the color is somehow, if it's on next to the road and it is somehow a public safety, I don't know, some neon thing or something like that, but otherwise, I'm not aware of any comments that Manny could make saying, well, no, that's not an appropriate color. But it's up to you all. We can modify the language any way you want.
I'm in favor of leaving the language the way it is. Basically, for what Jerry said, this is kind of a first pass. We're going to see how it goes. I don't think that most of the properties that we've seen come into town now, anyone would object to any of the colors that are out there currently. So I think, you know, for the time being, and we're talking about if it becomes a big problem, we can come back and we can look at it a little bit closer later on.
All right. Why don't we put on a schedule to come back in 6 months, review it with the planning and zoning, and see how it's been working. Jamie, want to put that on your schedule?
Absolutely.
Any public comment? Okay. Is there a motion on the floor?
Let Mr. Cos make the motion tonight.
Make a motion, we approve the first reading of ordinance number 627, which is item number 11 on the agenda of October 2nd, 2017.
I'll second that.
The motion is second. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna say,
Opposed?
I'm gonna say no because I'm concerned with the color.
Okay. Duly noted.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. All right, moving on to item number 12. Tracy?
Ordinance number 628, an ordinance of the Town of Ocean Ridge, Florida, amending its Code of Ordinances by amending Chapter 1, General Provisions, Section 1-3, Definitions, to clarify the definition of family, Chapter 67, Buildings and Building Regulations, Article 7, Building Standards, Division 3, Occupancy Limitations, Section 67-205, Occupancy Limitations, to clarify occupancy limitations, providing for codification, repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, and an effective date.
Thank you. All right, Jamie, want to give us a little background on this?
Yeah, this, and I'll turn it over to the attorney to answer the technical questions, but this works to redefine the accommodation of the number of unrelated people, I believe, that live in a given property and other related items to that, and gives a process for somebody to appeal or apply for a variation to that number, which affects ultimately some congregate living and other types of facilities where the number of people living in a property might come into issue. It was a desire expressed by this commission to reduce the number of unrelated persons living together under the town codes, and that's what this sets out to do. And I would defer to the attorney if he wants to talk about any of the technical.
Yeah, you know, I mean,
nuances.
basically, that is it. You all had kind of given staff direction to take a look at that to see if we could tighten some of the regulations dealing with transient housing here in the town. As I think, as Mr. Gray had mentioned, where, you know, you're seeing different homes and different construction come up here. You're also will probably also see more transient housing issues, as other communities have also experienced that. And basically what this provides for is that if there are some occupancies that are currently exceeding 5, your code currently allows up to 5 unrelated. This reduces it down to 3 unrelated. And we will have a year's grace period, or if the lease agreement expires earlier than the year, then they would have to come into compliance then. But otherwise, people are given a year's grace period to come into compliance. And that is basically the gist of this. This was also in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission at their September 25th meeting, and they had also recommended approval. I don't know if you all have some individual questions on there. A lot of this, the language for the definition of family, I'd actually borrowed this from the city of Delray Beach because they had done a very in-depth study. They had just finished redoing a lot of their ordinances on transient housing, where they have spent quite a bit of money on hiring experts and people like that in the planning field and the legal field to come up with language that they feel works best and helps protect them. And I just kind of pawned off them for their definition of family. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
I actually have a question. I asked Brian this before. The last sentence in, I don't know, section 2, first paragraph. Does that, we were going to think about that legally, and you think it's okay?
And you know what I would like for you to do is let's leave it in now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of circle back with some people I know who who have been dealing with this for quite a while, and just kind of confirm with them. I think I know the reasoning for that, and I don't have an issue with it, but let me circle back with them so I can get you a better answer on that.
My concern was that it cuts either way when you read it. So Brian, we just need a legal opinion. That's it.
But your recommendation is to approve it
As is.
as is?
Yes, because, I mean, it would be much easier to go ahead and take it out on second reading if, once I come back to you and hopefully I can give you an adequate explanation, and then you can make a decision at that time.
All right. Is there a motion?
I move that we adopt ordinance number 628 as set forth in item number 12 in our agenda tonight.
Second.
Second, public comment? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. All right, item 13. Tracy.
Ordinance number 626, an ordinance of the Town of Ocean Ridge, Florida, amending its Code of Ordinances by amending Chapter 2, Administration, Article 5, Elections, Section 2-193, filing date for candidates for Town Commission, to change the qualifying period to better allow for absentee voting, providing for codification, repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, and an effective date.
His second reading of this, is there any other new item, any other new information? No?
It's just to be compliant with the request of the supervisor of elections and align us with that whole system for notification purposes.
Okay, is there a motion?
I move that we adopt ordinance number 626 on the second reading as set forth in item number 13 on tonight's agenda.
Second.
There's a motion and second, public comment. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, everyone, thank you for coming.